Since today is the spring equinox, I wanted to say a few words about the meaning of equinox in Judaism. We call it tkufa, the fourth kufot during the year, and in particular the spring equinox. Its importance, of course, is that after it is the holiday of our freedom when we came out of Egypt, Pesach, or the Chag HaMatzot as the Torah calls it, the holiday of matzah, the holiday which our nation accepted with great love. It always has to be in the middle of the lunar month, right? It starts on the 15th of the spring month. We call it today Nisan, this month, the first month of the Jewish year, as the Torah calls it, the first, right? This month will be the first of your months. But the 5 books of Moshe never call it Nisan. Nisan, just like the other names of the months today, came from Babylonian exile. These are names of these months that were common in Babylonia. But the 5 books of Moshe call this month the month of spring or of barley crop in Israel. So Chodesh HaAviv. Aviv is the time when we have to start Pesach, and that's why it says Shamor et Chodesh HaAviv. You have to keep this month, meaning when the Torah says that the first month will always be in springtime, this way it actually tells us how to make the calendar. Of course, the calendar is based on the oral law. Our calendar is quite complex, but most of the main ideas of our calendar are hinted in the written Torah. Meaning, on the one hand, the month itself is defined as a period of the moon, of course, right? The month only depends on the moon, not on some arbitrary 30-day period. And the moon, as I mentioned in the previous lesson, when I discussed the fact that this year we have 2 of the winter months had 30 days each, even though in some years they have 29 days. All the Jewish months are either 29 or 30 days because the period of the moon is approximately halfway through, in the middle between 29 and 30. So they usually alternate. Every other month is either 29 or 30 days, but sometimes there are a couple of months or 3 months in a row that are 29 or 30. And that happens in the winter in our fixed calendar. And this year we had both of these winter months, 30 days. That's why we had extra Shabbat, and that's why the Parshiot of this week, as I mentioned in the previous lesson, are split. Usually, Truma, Vayakel and Tzitza and Pikudei are read together. These 2 Parshiot, which we're reading this week and next Shabbat, are usually read together on a regular year when there is one Adar. But this year we have to split them because, if you remember, Rosh Hashanah and Simchat Torah were right before Shabbat. 2 days of Rosh Hashanah were Thursday, Friday, and so too the days of Shmini Atzeret and Simchat Torah. So we had an extra Shabbat, and then because of these 2 months were both long, we have an extra Shabbat now, because Pesach falls on Sunday. So because of this one extra Shabbat, these months are longer. So and Rosh Hashanah fell on Thursday. That's why we have an extra Shabbat throughout this year, and we have to split 2 Torah readings in order to have to cover 2 Shabbatot. I myself didn't remember this. This happens like once in 30-something years on average. Very rare thing. That on a regular year, non-leap year, we would have these 2 Parshiot read separately. I was actually preparing the lessons for these 2 Parshiot together because I thought this Shabbat we're going to read both Vayakel and Pikudei. And then we will end up reading the day after tomorrow on Shabbat. We'll be reading only 1 Parsha, as I said, because of the extra Shabbat. Whatever the case may be, the months are defined as periods of the moon. Chadash, right? Chodesh means new, renewal of the moon, when we see the new moon. And on the other hand, if you take just 12 lunar months, then you will never have Pesach in the spring every year because it will keep moving. For instance, Muslim calendar is 12 regular lunar months. So that's why Ramadan can fall in the spring, in the fall, in the summer, in the winter, because by them, every lunar year, 12 lunar months, they move by about 10 or 11 days backwards. So, for example, this year, Ramadan is right now, so it fell on our Adar. But on a different year, it could start moving back after approximately 3 years. It's going to be falling on Shvat, and then it's going to be falling back to Tevet, etc., etc. But in Judaism, like I said, the Torah defines that we want to be shomer at Chodesh HaAviv. We have to keep the spring month, the Chodesh HaAviv, in order to keep the Pesach. So those two conditions kind of force you to have a solar-lunar calendar, a combination of solar and lunar calendar. On the one hand, you need the months that are lunar. On the other hand, some years you'll have 13 such months, and other years you'll have 12 such months, because otherwise you're not going to have Pesach on Chodesh HaAviv. Otherwise, Pesach would be moving just like Ramadan backwards, and after a few years, it will be in the winter instead of in the spring. So this particular year is regular, non-leap year, when we had one Adar, but the year before we had two Adars, 2 months of Adar, and that's how we compensate once in approximately, it's 7 out of 19. It's once in 2 or 3 years on average. So it's sometimes there are 2 years, sometimes there are 3 years that pass, meaning 2 regular years, then 1 year with the 2 Adars. Sometimes just 1 regular year and 1 year with with 2 Adars. So on average, it comes out to be that the solar year is 12 lunar months and 7/19 of a lunar month. So that's why 7 out of 19 years we have 13 months instead of 12. And all of this in order to make sure that the Pesach falls in the spring, not in the summer, not in the winter. Sorry, I mean in the summer also it shouldn't fall. If we had too many Adars too often, then the Pesach would fall in the summer, which is also not good. It has to fall in the spring. So this particular year there was no reason to add an Adar because Pesach already falls in the spring. Pesach is going to be in about 3 weeks, and today is the spring equinox. So the first middle of the lunar month that's going to fall after the equinox is going to be Pesach. Now, in the old times, we didn't have a fixed calendar, and the sages decided ad hoc. They did not just include this information, whether when the equinox will fall, but they had also all kinds of cheshbonot. The Talmud in Masechet Sanhedrin discusses all this. They had all kinds of reasons why they would add an extra Adar. There could be, for instance, that even though in theory spring is already here, but the year happens to be very cold. After all, the climate is much more complex. This is already chaos theory, right? Even though you'd expect, right, that every year, more or less, by the time of spring equinox, it's going to get warmer. But it could be very warm even before, and it could be very cold even after. It depends on a lot of different factors. Basically, the butterfly effect, right? Everything is a factor. So let's say the sages see that the year is really cold, and the barley doesn't seem to be growing on time. And if we're going to make Pesach, even though it's going to be after the spring equinox, but it's going to be still very cold, then we won't be able to get the barley offering, which is brought the day after Pesach, Omer. And other factors may have played a role. If, for instance, the people from various countries, the Jews who needed to attend the temple by Pesach, they're not going to make it on time, and all kinds of other reasons. So the sages had a deliberation of many sages who decided each year ad hoc whether we're going to add a month or not. Today everything is fixed. So we have all the calendar until times of Mashiach. Basically, all the calendar is fixed. There are tables, special tables, which tell you exactly which year is going to be leap, when each holiday is going to fall, on which days of the week, etc., etc. Everything is prepared until the Mashiach will come, and the methods of actually looking for the moon each time and deciding each leap year ad hoc will come back again. And on this I'm going to end. Really, this topic is far more complex. I simplified and just summarized some of the ideas. If you like this video, please press like and please subscribe to our channel.